I stood on the brick porch, holding a carefully wrapped box, listening to my daughter-in-law uninvite me from my own grandson's 4th birthday party. The crisp autumn air bit sharply through my thin wool cardigan, but the sudden chill spreading across my chest had nothing to do with the seasonal weather. At 39 years old, having raised my son David while building my own financial independence after my husband passed away, I had arrived 30 minutes early to Leo's 4-year celebration, genuinely eager to help set up the festive party decorations. The suburban driveway was completely empty, so I assumed they were still arranging things inside before the other guests arrived. But as I reached for the polished brass doorbell, the living room window, which was left slightly ajar to let in the cool afternoon breeze, caught my attention. Voices drifted clearly through the thin screen, cutting sharply through the quiet neighborhood air. I froze where I stood, the bright blue wrapping paper on Leo's present crinkling faintly under my tightening grip. The afternoon sunlight spilled across the manicured lawn, illuminating the contrast between the cheerful, festive banners hanging inside and the harsh, cold words echoing through the open frame. I wasn't expecting grand fanfare, but I had arrived with an open heart, carrying a handmade wooden toy and a mother's quiet desire to be present in her family's joy. Instead, the cool breeze carried a reality I was no longer able to ignore. Standing on the quiet threshold of a suburban home I had personally helped build and maintain. I really don't understand why she has to come over every single year, Sarah complained, her voice sharp, annoyed, condescending, and dripping with thinly veiled impatience. She just sits there, quietly judging my party decorations and hovering around our friends as if she owns the place. Sarah was 22, accustomed to demanding absolute, uncompromising perfection, and completely blind to the sacrifices that made her comfortable lifestyle possible. "Can't you just tell her Leo is coming down with a stomach bug?" she pressed David, the sound of clinking expensive glassware punctuating her sharp demand. David, my young 21-year-old son, mumbled something low, hesitant, and indecisive as usual. He was a young man who had spent his entire short adult life taking the easy path of least resistance, preferring quiet compliance over standing up for what was right. "I'm serious, David," Sarah insisted, her voice tone growing colder and far more demanding with every single passing second. "We don't need her hovering around our guests today. Just call her right now and tell her not to come. It's really that simple." I listened to my son's heavy, painful silence through the thin window screen, waiting for him to offer even a faint defense of the mother who had given him everything. But the silence stretched on, heavy and confirming, until his quiet, hesitant hum of agreement shattered whatever remaining hope I had still held in my heart. He chose comfort over truth, allowing his young wife to rewrite my presence as an unwanted burden, without uttering even a single word in my defense. "Just tell her to send the birthday check instead," Sarah added coolly, her tone shifting seamlessly from sharp annoyance to cold, calculated entitlement. "We desperately need that money for the new outdoor patio furniture set anyway at the store, and she always writes generous checks." David quietly murmured another passive response, silently agreeing to the scheme, without a second thought. Standing silently on that porch, holding a gift wrapped carefully with love, I finally saw my exact value in their eyes, with absolute crystal clarity. I was truly not a real mother, a loved mother, a grandmother, or a cherished family member, but merely a living, breathing checkbook with a heartbeat. For 3 years, ever since David and Sarah got married, I had quietly subsidized their comfortable, lavish, and luxurious lifestyle, transferring funds whenever they hinted at a tight month, covering Leo's preschool, and making their monthly mortgage manageable. I had believed I was cushioning their early start in adult life, helping my young son navigate early adulthood. But my blind generosity had merely funded an insatiable appetite for unearned financial privilege and comfort. They wanted my money to buy expensive outdoor furniture to impress their wealthy friends, yet they wanted my presence wiped completely clean from the very lawn where that furniture would sit. The realization didn't break me. Instead, it cut cleanly and directly through years of self-deception, like a sharp surgical blade. The illusion of maternal duty dissolved into the cool, crisp autumn air, leaving behind a quiet, unbreakable, unwavering resolve that settled deep within my chest, completely stilling my once uncertain, hesitant hands. I didn't even knock on the door. I didn't push open the front entryway to demand the basic respect and dignity I deserved as a mother and a human being. Arguments had never worked with Sarah, as she thrived on playing the perpetual victim whenever confronted with the reality of her own cruelty. Instead, I quietly and gently placed the blue-wrapped present down on the patterned coconut fiber welcome mat. I turned around smoothly and deliberately, without making a sound, and walked back down the pristine concrete driveway toward my parked, quiet sedan. As I sat quietly behind the steering wheel, I didn't cry. Nor did I feel heartbroken or devastated in the slightest. What I felt was a sudden, quiet, liberating clarity washing over my mind. The ride back to my house was completely silent. I turned off the radio and simply listened to the steady, rhythmic hum of the tires against the smooth, dark neighborhood asphalt. The emotional fog that had clouded my judgment for years had finally cleared away entirely, revealing the stark, healthy boundaries I needed to establish for my own dignity. At 39 years old, I was independent and entirely capable of protecting my own peace. As I pulled into my driveway, I realized that standing up firmly for myself didn't require a loud confrontation or a dramatic public scene. It simply required stepping away from tables where basic human respect was no longer being served, leaving behind the heavy burden of trying to buy genuine love that was simply never truly there. The house was completely still when I stepped inside, the warm afternoon light spilling across my clean, wooden kitchen table. The first thing I did was brew a strong cup of hot, dark black tea, letting the hot mug warm my palms as the scent of steeped tea leaves filled the quiet room. I sat down, opened my laptop, and logged directly into my online banking portal. The screen loaded, displaying the checking account I had maintained ever since my husband passed away, true testament to my hard work and independence. I navigated straight to the Scheduled Automatic Transfers tab, where the automated financial pillars holding up my son's comfortable, extravagant lifestyle sat in neat, orderly rows. There they were, month after month. $800 for David's luxury car loan, $400 for Leo's extracurricular sports activities, and another $500 sent directly to Sarah for household groceries each month. Over $20,000 a year, flowing quietly and continuously out of my life and into theirs, rarely acknowledged and simply taken for granted as a natural right. I moved my cursor over the first recurring transfer, my finger hovering steadily over the smooth trackpad. A mother's natural instinct is always to provide, protect, and cushion the fall. But providing had turned into funding an extravagant, unearned lifestyle for people who didn't want me in their home. With a calm, grounded, deliberate breath, I clicked the cancel button, watching the green confirmation message flash across the screen as the first pillar crumbled quietly into the afternoon air. With a calm, grounded hand, I moved the cursor over the second recurring transfer on my banking portal screen. $400, scheduled faithfully every single fortnight for Leo's extracurricular activities and private lessons. Click. The status updated to canceled. I moved to the third. $500, transferred directly to Sarah's personal bank account for household groceries and gourmet supplies. Click. Canceled. Lastly, I highlighted the largest automated pillar. $800 designated directly for David's luxury SUV loan installment. Click. Canceled. In less than 2 minutes, $1,700 a month simply ceased to exist for them. That was $20,400 a year of my hard-earned money, quietly and safely redirected back into my own life. Sitting in the quiet afternoon sunlight, watching the portal refresh, I felt no surge of spite or vindictive thrill. Rather, I felt relief. What I felt was a profound, liberating sense of restoration. For 3 long years, I had believed that cushioning my young 21-year-old son's early married life was an act of maternal love, a way to support his young family while he built his own career. But standing outside that window earlier, listening to them calculate my financial value while plotting my exclusion from my grandson's life, that comfortable illusion had shattered completely. Providing had turned into funding an insatiable, toxic culture of unearned entitlement. By canceling those transfers, I wasn't punishing them out of malice. I was simply removing the artificial financial floor that kept them from growing up, stepping back so they could finally learn to stand firmly on their own feet. Right as I closed the web browser, the quiet stillness of my kitchen was broken by the sharp, insistent buzz of my mobile phone sliding across the wooden table. A fresh text message lit up the glass screen, displaying Sarah's name. "Hey, Angela, so sorry for the late notice, but Leo is running a very high fever today. We have to cancel the party to keep the other kids safe. So sad. We'll miss you. You can just mail his birthday check to the house. Love you, Sarah. I stared at the glowing letters, reading her cold, manipulative words twice in total. She hadn't even had the decency or courage to let David make the call himself. Instead, she had crafted a bold, effortless lie, banking entirely on my usual compliant, forgiving nature. She genuinely believed I was sitting at home completely unaware of her deceit, waiting dutifully to write another generous check to fund their desires. I took a slow, deliberate sip of my hot black tea, letting the rich warmth comfort my palms as a faint, serene smile touched my lips. I didn't type out an angry reply accusing her of lying. I didn't call her to demand an apology or unleash years of pent-up frustration. True strength doesn't scream or engage in petty theatrical drama. It operates in quiet, unshakable dignity. I simply set the phone face down on the table, leaving her message unanswered, knowing with absolute clarity that the quiet storm heading her way would speak far louder than any words I could ever type. Early the next morning, I booted up my quiet home office computer and opened a blank spreadsheet to create a comprehensive accounting of the past 3 long years. Column A listed the exact transaction dates. Column B recorded the precise dollar amounts. And column C detailed the specific descriptions of every single transaction. I went through 3 full years of official bank statements, meticulously documenting every dollar that had left my account to subsidize their extravagant lives. The initial $50,000 down payment assistance for their 4-bedroom suburban home, the recurring luxury vehicle loan installments, the emergency home HVAC system repair fund, and even Sarah's expensive boutique gym membership that she insisted was necessary physical therapy. Line by line, the numbers accumulated into a staggering total, exceeding $80,000 in total. Looking at the final sum, I shook my head in quiet disbelief, realizing how thoroughly I had enabled their superficial, lavish lifestyle under the guise of blind maternal generosity. I printed out the 3 full pages of neat, clear, undeniable numbers on my office printer. Taking a bold red ink pen from my desk drawer, I drew a thick, sharp, unwavering line directly beneath the final balance. Below it, in clear, firm handwriting, I wrote 3 decisive, bold words. Account permanently closed. There were no bitter personal insults written anywhere on those printed pages, only cold, indisputable, concrete financial facts that clearly marked the end of an unappreciated era, establishing an unshakable boundary that would safely protect my peace, dignity, and financial independence forever. Instead of simply dropping the decorative envelope into a standard street mailbox with a simple stamp, I drove across town to the main post office and sent the heavy document via certified mail with signature confirmation. I wanted an official, legally binding paper trail to ensure that the statement arrived directly into their personal hands, without any excuses or claims of non-receipt. As I drove through their quiet, affluent suburban neighborhood later that afternoon to check on things, I glanced carefully toward their front porch. The shiny, blue-wrapped present I had left on the welcome mat yesterday was gone. They had taken my handmade gift inside their home for Leo, completely ignoring the fact that I had stood silently on their porch, choosing to pretend I had never been there, while expecting my monetary checks to arrive on schedule. The sheer, hypocritical, arrogant entitlement of their actions no longer wounded me. Instead, it reaffirmed with clarity that every single boundary I was establishing was entirely necessary and long overdue for my own well-being. I drove back to my house, feeling a deep, unshakable sense of calm settling over my spirit. At 39 years old, having built my own financial independence and stability through hard work and independence, I was no longer willing to play the role of an exploited, silent benefactor in my son's life. I spent the remainder of the evening sitting on my back patio, watching the warm, golden autumn sunset filter softly through the changing autumn leaves, completely at peace with the firm boundary I had drawn. The inevitable, chaotic explosion arrived at precisely 7:15 in the morning on a Tuesday morning, David's name flashing frantically across my phone screen. I was sitting peacefully on my patio, enjoying a warm piece of toast, when I finally slid my finger across the glass to answer. "Mom," David panted loudly, his voice laced with pure, unadulterated, desperate panic over the phone speaker. "My car payment just bounced. The bank just sent an urgent alert." "Did your system glitch? The transfer didn't go through." "Good morning, David," I replied, taking a deliberate, slow bite of my toast. "No, the system didn't glitch. I officially canceled the transfer. I am no longer paying for your vehicles, your groceries, or your new patio furniture. Check your mail. I sent a statement." Heavy background noise rustled as paper tore open loudly, followed by Sarah's sweet, manipulative facade completely gone. "Angela?" she shrieked, her sweet, manipulative facade completely gone. "What kind of sick, twisted joke is this? You can't just cut us off like this. We have a lifestyle to maintain. You owe Leo that much." "I owe Leo love," I answered, my voice calm, steady, firm, and completely untroubled by her loud shouting. "I owe you nothing. You asked me to just send the money and not come over. So I sent you a statement of everything I've provided. The Bank of Mom is officially and permanently closed." I hung up, tapped her contact name, scrolled to the bottom, and blocked her phone number completely, stepping fully into my newfound freedom. After hanging up the phone and blocking Sarah's number, I walked directly into my attached two-car garage, flipping on the bright overhead fluorescent lights. For 3 long years, ever since David and Sarah bought their home, they had treated my property like their personal, rent-free storage facility. Half of my garage space was completely walled off by a towering mountain of their neglected belongings. Cardboard boxes filled with Sarah's out-of-season designer clothing, oversized plastic bins crammed with holiday decorations, and an expensive leather armchair they refused to sell, yet had no room for in their own house. Leaning against a stack of bins were David's expensive custom golf clubs, collecting dust alongside gym equipment and forgotten household items. They dropped things off whenever it suited them, crowding my personal space so thoroughly that I barely had room to park my own sedan safely inside. looking at the cluttered wall of clutter in the harsh fluorescent glare, I finally saw it for what it truly was. Another physical extension of their entitlement. They expected me to host their excess property without rent or gratitude. Just as they expected me to fund their vehicle loans and groceries without inviting me to family birthday parties. At 39 years old, stepping fully into my personal independence, I realized that reclaiming my emotional peace required reclaiming my physical space and personal territory first. I rolled up my cardigan sleeves tightly, feeling a quiet, determined energy settling into my hands, ready to clear away every single trace of their unearned intrusion from my home, once and for all. Knowing that proper legal boundaries are just as crucial as emotional ones, I opened my laptop and drafted a formal, legally binding written notice regarding their stored property. In strict accordance with established state property laws regarding abandoned personal items, I composed a clear, respectful letter granting them exactly 14 days to retrieve all their belongings from my premises. The notice explicitly stated that if the items were not removed by 5 o'clock on the 14th day, the remaining property would be legally declared abandoned and either donated to charity or disposed of entirely through a professional hauling service. I sent the formal notice via certified mail with signature tracking to ensure an indisputable paper trail, while simultaneously sending a digital copy of the document directly to David's personal email and phone. There were no petty insults or passive-aggressive remarks in the text, only clear, professional, and firm legal terms that established an absolute, non-negotiable deadline. For 3 years, Sarah and David had operated under the false assumption that my maternal kindness meant I could be pushed around without consequences. But receiving a formal, official legal notice forced them to recognize that the mother they thought they could manipulate was operating with complete, unwavering legal clarity and absolute authority. By handling the situation through proper legal channels, I protected myself from future claims while making it abundantly clear that my home was no longer an open storage locker for their unappreciated, extravagant lifestyle, setting a firm, unbreakable boundary that would safeguard my inner peace and privacy forever. The following morning, I took the next essential step in securing my physical boundaries by hiring an experienced, licensed locksmith to overhaul my home's entire physical security system. Within 2 hours, the skilled technician removed the old mechanical brass locks that David held duplicate keys to, replacing them with commercial-grade, keyless smart deadbolts featuring programmable security codes. Alongside the new deadbolts, I had a high-definition smart ring video doorbell installed directly at the front entryway, fully equipped with motion-activated sensors, clear real-time night vision, and instant mobile alerts. When David had handed over his spare house key a few days earlier, he assumed it was merely a symbolic gesture, likely believing he could still drop by my house unannounced or use a duplicate key he had secretly cut years ago. But watching the locksmith carefully calibrate the electronic keypads, I felt a deep, profound sense of quiet, liberating relief wash over my spirit. The brass key resting quietly inside my kitchen drawer was now completely and entirely useless. The physical tethers connecting my private home to their unannounced intrusions, or permanently and irrevocably severed. I programmed a master digital security code that only I personally possessed, effectively closing the physical and symbolic door on their unearned access to my personal life. Standing on my front porch, testing the smooth electronic lock pad with a simple tap of my finger, I knew I was not building a fortress out of fear or bitterness, but creating a sacred, protected sanctuary where my peace, privacy, and personal autonomy could finally flourish without interruption. On the 10th night of the 14-day notice period, the quiet stillness of my bedroom was broken at 11:45 by a sharp chime from my personal smartphone. The high-tech smart ring doorbell system had detected motion at the front entryway, broadcasting a live, crystal-clear video feed directly to my screen. Through the night vision camera, I watched Sarah standing on my porch in the dim porch light, covertly attempting to slide David's old brass key into the newly installed smart deadbolt. She turned the key back and forth with increasing frustration, completely unaware that the lock had been upgraded several days prior. In her shoulder bag, I could see a manila envelope. She had secretly come over to my house under the cover of darkness, hoping to use her spare key to search my home for a birthday check or financial documents while I slept. Watching her try to bypass my boundaries under the cover of night filled me with a deep, quiet calm rather than fear. I didn't open the door or engage in a loud, late-night confrontation. Instead, I saved the clear live video clip to my cloud storage, attached it to a concise text message, and sent it directly to her phone. The locks have been changed, Sarah. Please respect the 14-day legal notice and do not attempt to enter my property again. Within 10 seconds, I saw her phone screen illuminate on the live camera feed. Her face turned deathly pale in the infrared light as she read the message, quickly turning around and rushing off my porch into the dark. At precisely 4:30 in the afternoon on the 14th day, a heavy, dusty, rented moving truck screeched to a sudden halt in my driveway. I stood calmly on my front porch, enjoying the cool autumn breeze, as David jumped out of the driver's cab, his face flushed red with sweat and unbridled, tense irritation. Without saying a single word to me, he began aggressively hauling his heavy boxes, the leather armchair, and his custom golf clubs out of my garage, slamming them violently into the back of the truck. His jaw was clenched very tight, every movement radiating a childish, bitter resentment over being forced to manage his own financial affairs. As he threw the final box of Sarah's winter coats over the tailgate, he turned toward the porch, glaring directly at me with narrow, angry eyes. "Are you happy now, Mom?" he snapped, wiping his brow with the back of his hand. "Sarah is having a total panic attack because we can't afford the car payment or the mortgage without your money. And now you're treating us both like complete strangers." I looked at my 21-year-old son with calm, compassionate eyes, my voice steady, calm, and unwavering as I replied. You are 21 years old, David.
It is time for you to take full responsibility for your own household, instead of blaming me for your choices. He slammed the truck door shut without another word and drove away, leaving behind a completely empty, spotless garage. A clean, peaceful slate where I could finally begin building a peaceful life of my own. With my attached garage finally cleared of their clutter, the strange, heavy silence in my house soon transformed into a deep, peaceful sanctuary. Seeking a fresh outlet for my creative energy, I drove down to the local community center and walked straight past the bingo hall and knitting circles to the back annex. I officially enrolled in an evening woodworking workshop led by Thomas Vance, a 68-year-old master craftsman with sawdust permanently etched into his jeans. The rich, aromatic scent of freshly cut cedar, pine, and oak filled the spacious workshop, accompanied by the steady, rhythmic hum of lathes and handsaws. For 3 days a week, Thomas patiently taught me how to measure with precision, cut along intricate natural wood grain patterns, and sand rough edges down to a polished smoothness. In the beginning, I made mistakes, ruined good blocks of lumber, and scraped my fingers. But I learned the quiet art of patience. Nobody in the workshop cared about my social standing, asked me for financial handouts, or expected me to fund their lifestyle. We simply drank cheap drip coffee from paper cups and talked about timber grains, wood stains, and joinery techniques. As I ran my hands over the smooth surfaces of small birdhouses, picture frames, and intricate decorative boxes, I felt a deep, healing transformation taking root within my spirit. Working with my hands reconnected me to my own inner strength, proving that with time, patience, and intentional care, even the most damaged, rough-hewn pieces of life can be reshaped into something beautiful, strong, and enduring. Looking at my newly emptied garage space, an inspiring, creative idea began to take shape that would permanently transform the room from a cold site of past financial exploitation into a source of vitality and purpose. Since Thomas and a small group of local senior artisans desperately needed extra workspace for their custom furniture projects, I offered to lease my newly cleaned garage to them as a neighborhood woodworking workshop. We signed a simple, legally binding lease agreement that generated a steady, modest monthly rental income, effectively turning a space that had been used as a free, unappreciated dumping ground into a productive, self-sustaining, income-generating financial asset. Within 2 weeks, the once cluttered concrete floor was filled with sturdy workbenches, organized tool racks, and the golden, warm glow of industrial work lamps. Instead of being reminded of Sarah and David's unearned entitlement every time I opened the inner door, my garage was now alive with the pleasant, soothing sounds of soft whistling, humming power tools, and genuine lighthearted laughter. Thomas and his fellow woodworkers treated my home with deep, profound respect, always sweeping up sawdust at the end of the day and leaving fresh-cut aromatic cedar shavings that pleasantly perfumed the air. Turning that physical space over to a community of creative, hard-working individuals provided me with both added financial independence and a vibrant, fulfilling daily purpose, proving that when you finally clear out toxic emotional and physical clutter from your life, you create abundant room for meaningful human connections, healthy productivity, and genuine, lasting joy to flourish in its place. Meanwhile, the sudden absence of my $1,700 automated monthly subsidy triggered a swift, inevitable financial collapse for David and Sarah. Lacking the basic financial discipline to adjust their lavish, unsustainable lifestyle, they quickly fell behind on their monthly financial obligations, causing their credit scores to plummet swiftly and catastrophically as missed payment notices piled up. Within 6 weeks, David's luxury vehicle was repossessed by the primary lender, forcing them to trade down to an old, dented, high-mileage used sedan, while Sarah was forced to take on exhausting, long night shifts at a local retail store to keep up with their heavy mortgage. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, while I was casually taking a short break from the workshop, David hesitantly approached me at a quiet vinyl booth diner a block away. As we sat across from each other over 2 steaming mugs of dark black coffee, I barely recognized my young 21-year-old son. The polished, carefree exterior he had maintained on my dime was now completely shattered. Deep, dark circles framed his tired, sunken eyes. His clothes were noticeably unpressed, and his hands trembled slightly as he gripped his coffee cup. He admitted that their finances were desperately tight, and that Sarah was constantly, intensely panicked and angry. Seeing his distress, a natural, instinctive pang of maternal sympathy touched my heart, but I kept my composure calm, neutral, and steady. I realized with clarity that his current financial hardship was not a tragedy, but the necessary, long-overdue reality check he needed after years of living beyond his means on unearned financial credit and subsidies. David cleared his throat nervously and loudly, leaning across the diner table as if preparing to pitch an innovative, lucrative business proposal. "Mom, we have a solution that works for everyone," he began, trying hard to sound confident despite his obvious, growing desperation. "Sarah is working full-time night shifts now, but childcare for young Leo is completely unaffordable for us right now. We were thinking, our basement is currently unfinished, but it already has basic plumbing fully installed. We could lay down some simple, cheap carpet and put up a temporary partition wall, and you could move in with us. You wouldn't have to pay any rent at all. All you would need to do is watch young Leo every single day while we're at work." I sat frozen in the vinyl booth, staring at my young son in utter disbelief as the sheer, manipulative, arrogant absurdity of his proposal settled into the quiet air. Having lost their free, automated monthly allowance, their logical next step was not to downsize their 4-bedroom home or cut their personal expenses, but to convert their 39-year-old financially independent mother into an unpaid live-in nanny, banished directly to a cold, concrete basement. They wanted to strip away my newfound freedom, my comfortable home, and my personal dignity, reducing my entire existence to a servant who provided free daily labor while living beneath their floorboards. He sat there waiting for my enthusiastic agreement, completely blind to the profound, insulting disrespect embedded in his offer, genuinely believing he was offering me a wonderful, generous favor. Before I could even process the sheer, unbelievable audacity of his proposal, a sharp, genuine laugh erupted suddenly from deep within my chest, echoing clearly and loudly through the quiet diner. I couldn't stop it. The sheer absurdity of his entitlement was so overwhelming that laughter was truly the only natural response. David's forced smile instantly vanished from his face, his jaw dropping as a stark, horrifying realization washed over him. The mother he thought he could manipulate through guilt was permanently gone. "I am certainly not a nanny, David," I told him, sliding my coffee cup away with a firm, steady, unwavering hand. "And I am certainly not a basement tenant under any circumstances. You don't need a mother in your life. You just need a free, live-in au pair to maintain an extravagant, lavish lifestyle you never earned yourself." David slumped heavily back into the vinyl booth, burying his face in his trembling hands as reality crushed his superficial illusions. "Mom, please," he pleaded softly. "Sarah is losing her mind, and we're falling apart." "You aren't falling apart, David," I corrected him very gently, but firmly. "You are simply resetting back to reality. You built a life you couldn't afford on money you didn't earn yourself, relying on a woman you didn't value or respect. That was entirely your own choice." I placed a $5 bill on the table for my black coffee, picked up my purse, and stood up with complete, serene self-respect, leaving him to face the real, challenging adult world he had spent his entire adult life trying to avoid. The glass screen of Angela's phone reflected a woman who had finally learned the architecture of her own soul. When David's name illuminated the display, she did not feel the familiar, sickening spike of adrenaline that had dictated her life for decades. Instead, a quiet, unyielding clarity washed over her. She answered, her voice dropping into an octave of absolute stillness. The condition she delivered was non-negotiable, etched in the granite of self-preservation. If David wished for his son, Leo, to see his grandmother, he would bring the boy to Oak Ridge Park on Saturday afternoon, alone. Just the two of them. Sarah was strictly forbidden from coming, barred entirely from the sacred perimeter Angela had drawn around her peace. There would be no frantic bargaining, no guilt-tripping backdoors, and no parasitic audience to validate the toxicity. If David accepted this single condition without reservation, the meeting would happen. If he resisted or tried to maneuver Sarah into the arrangement, the line would go permanently silent. Angela offered no anger, no theatrical resentment, and no emotional bait for him to seize upon. She simply stated the truth of her terms as though describing the rising of the sun. The silence on the line stretched thin, heavy with the terrifying weight of a mother who had stopped begging and started choosing herself. In that decisive moment, Angela handed her son the ultimate mirror. Accept the boundary or forfeit the relationship entirely. On the other end of the line, the heavy silence collapsed into the sound of David's slow, shuddering breath. A profound realization pierced through his remaining defenses, breaking something fragile and false within his chest. The youthful, codependent mother he had spent a lifetime manipulating, guilt-tripping, and bleeding dry
was gone, replaced by a steadfast woman who would never again be moved by his demands. Looking at the floor of his cluttered apartment, David felt the crushing defeat of a tyrant who had finally run out of leverage. There were no emotional cracks left to exploit, no hidden reservoirs of maternal guilt to tap into. Angela had laid down the law of the land, and for the first time in his adult life, David recognized that he held zero power. The desperate urge to argue, to invoke Sarah's anger, or to play the victim withered away before it could even formulate into words. He swallowed hard, his ego burning away into ash, leaving behind the bare, vulnerable core of a son who desperately missed his mother. "Okay, Mom," he whispered, the tone completely devoid of its usual sharp edge, entirely humbled by her uncompromising grace. "Just Leo and me. We'll be there." It was not a defeat born of spite, but a surrender born of absolute necessity. The quiet, painful beginning of a long overdue transformation. Saturday arrived dressed in the brilliant, golden hues of late October, painting the park in soft shades of crimson, amber, and honeyed sunlight. The crisp afternoon air carried the comforting aroma of damp earth and pine needles, whispering softly through the canopy of ancient oaks. Angela sat on a solitary wooden bench, her coat wrapped tightly around her, feeling remarkably grounded as fallen leaves danced around her boots. Then, the familiar, rusty hum of David's old sedan echoed from the gravel parking lot. The engine cut out, and a heartbeat later, the back door flew open with pure, unfiltered joy. Little Leo burst onto the grass like a ray of uncontained sunlight, his bright red jacket flashing against the golden lawn. "Grandma!" he screamed, his innocent voice echoing across the tranquil clearings, carrying a warmth that instantly dissolved the autumn chill. He sprinted with wild, uninhibited abandon, his tiny sneakers scattering leaves in every direction, completely unaware of the complex adult battles that had preceded this peaceful moment. Angela stood up, her heart expanding so rapidly it threatened to burst, opening her arms wide to catch the flying leap of the grandson who carried her bloodline forward into a cleaner, brighter story. As he slammed into her waist, burying his face in her coat, Angela held him close, inhaling the sweet scent of laundry soap and childhood innocence. After a long, joyful embrace, Angela knelt on the leaf-strewn ground, her eyes twinkling as she reached into her natural canvas tote bag. She pulled out a small object wrapped in soft white tissue paper, handling it with reverent care. As the paper fell away, it revealed a hand-carved wooden boat, meticulously painted in a rich, vibrant shade of deep ocean blue. Every curve of the timber was polished to a silky smoothness, sanded down through hours of patient, intentional labor that had served as Angela's personal therapy during the darkest winter months. Leo let out an enchanted gasp, his small, warm hands tenderly tracing the smooth hull and the delicate, hand-stitched canvas sail. "I made this just for you, sweet boy," Angela whispered softly, kissing his temple. Without missing a beat, Leo took the wooden vessel and bounded eagerly toward the edge of the park's serene, glass-like pond.
Kneeling at the muddy bank, he gently set the boat upon the cool water. The little blue boat caught a light autumn breeze, its vibrant sail unfurling as it glided smoothly across the sparkling surface, casting ripples of radiant light that shimmered toward the center of the lake. Leo clapped his hands with unbridled delight, watching his grandmother's love float effortlessly across the water, carrying a message of endurance, craft, and quiet beauty. A short distance away, sitting quietly at the far end of the wooden park bench, David watched the scene unfold in absolute silence. For the first time in memory, he made no move to step forward with handouts, brought up no unpaid medical bills, and offered no theatrical complaints about his endless financial struggles. The toxic urgency that used to define his presence had evaporated, replaced by a strange, quiet stillness that seemed almost unfamiliar on his frame. He sat with his hands resting humbly in his coat pockets, shoulders slightly rounded, his gaze drifting between his playing son and the mother he had so deeply wounded. A newfound humility settled over his posture like a heavy winter coat. The quiet dignity of a man who had finally stopped taking and started observing. In the soft light of the falling leaves, David recognized the sacredness of the boundary Angela had constructed. It was not a wall designed to exclude him, but a fortress built to protect love itself. He didn't interrupt their joy, nor did he demand a single thing for himself. He simply remained present, learning how to exist in the atmosphere of his mother's peace without contaminating it. It was a small, delicate seed of redemption, planted deeply in the rich autumn soil of a family finally learning how to heal. In the quiet, serene weeks that followed, Angela's life settled into an unshakable, deeply restorative rhythm of peace, clarity, and emotional freedom. Without the constant $1,700 monthly drain leaking continuously from her bank accounts, her personal budget expanded naturally, allowing her to invest in her own growth and happiness. At 39 years old, she spent her weekends exploring scenic, quiet coastal towns, purchasing high-grade chisels and specialty timbers for her workshop, and savoring quiet morning tea on her sunlit patio, without even a single ounce of anxiety. Her garage, once a dusty, chaotic warehouse for her son's entitlement, remained a warm, thriving hub of creativity, where local senior artisans gathered to share stories, wisdom, and craftsmanship. She no longer checked her phone with a tight chest, fearing another cold, manipulative text or an urgent demand for money. The heavy emotional weight that had pressed against her shoulders for nearly a decade had completely lifted, leaving behind a profound sense of self-ownership and inner peace. She realized that financial independence was not merely about numbers on a bank screen. It was the quiet freedom to direct one's life, energy, and resources toward genuine fulfillment. Sitting at her clean wooden table each morning, sipping hot, dark black tea while watching the birds in her backyard garden, Angela knew she had successfully reclaimed her home, her personal dignity, and her future. She had built a sacred sanctuary where her worth was defined by her own self-respect rather than the endless demands of an ungrateful household, living every single day peacefully on her own terms. Across town, suddenly stripped of the artificial financial floor that had subsidized their illusions, David and Sarah were forced to face the unyielding, hard realities of young adulthood. Without Angela's monthly checks to cover their excess, their superficial, lavish lifestyle quickly unraveled, compelling them to make drastic, long overdue lifestyle adjustments to survive. They listed Sarah's out-of-season designer wardrobe items online, sold the outdoor patio furniture they could not afford, and canceled their expensive boutique gym memberships. Sarah continued working demanding, long, tiring late-night shifts at the retail store, her former arrogant entitlement gradually replaced by the sobering discipline of earning her own living, honest, day by day. David took on extra overtime hours at his engineering firm, learning to manage and budget their modest household budget without expecting a parental bailout whenever a monthly bill came due. It was a painful, jarring, difficult transition for them. But for the very first time in their marriage, they were operating strictly within their actual, limited financial means. David stopped blaming his mother for their own financial strain, realizing that her refusal to enable them had stripped away their childish, irresponsible excuses. Though their relationship with Angela remained strictly bounded to short Saturday park visits with young Leo, the total absence of free money allowed David to develop a nascent sense of genuine adult responsibility. By confronting the consequences of their own financial choices, David and Sarah began the slow, necessary process of maturing into fully self-reliant adults, learning that true stability cannot be borrowed, inherited, or endlessly demanded from others. Sitting on the weathered wooden park bench under the golden, sunny autumn canopy, Angela watched the vibrant blue wooden sailboat glide effortlessly across the glass-like pond. 4-year-old Leo ran joyfully along the damp, muddy bank, his bright laughter echoing across the water as he cheered his tiny vessel forward with pure, unadulterated delight. Looking at her grandson's glowing, happy face, Angela felt an extraordinary wave of warmth and contentment settle deep within her quiet heart. She realized that this simple, beautiful, hand-carved toy sailboat, crafted through hours of patient, painstaking, intentional labor in her workshop, held 1 billion times more genuine value than all the cold, lifeless $1,000 birthday checks she had written to them in the past. Those automated bank transfers had bought only temporary, transactional compliance and superficial gratitude, whereas this small blue wooden boat had forged an indelible, warm, loving memory that Leo would carry joyfully for the rest of his life. The water reflected the warm, radiant afternoon sunlight, casting shimmering ripples across the pond as the shiny blue wooden hull caught the gentle breeze. In that quiet, radiant moment, Angela understood the profound difference between funding an extravagant lifestyle and nurturing a child's precious soul. True affection could never be bought with a checkbook or maintained through cold financial appeasement. It flourished only in the fertile soil of genuine presence, shared laughter, joy, and authentic, heartfelt effort. Watching the boat navigate the clear, calm waters, she smiled serenely and softly,
knowing that her quiet hands had crafted something that money could ever buy or replace. Reflecting deeply on her personal journey, Angela gained a profound understanding of the true nature, wisdom, and sacred purpose of healthy boundaries. She realized that setting firm, clear, unwavering, uncompromising limits with her adult son was not an act of cruelty, abandonment, spite, or revenge, but the purest, highest form of maternal love she could ever possibly offer him. For 3 years, her natural instinct to cushion every single fall and fund every unnecessary luxury had hindered David's personal growth and maturation, keeping him trapped in a perpetual state of entitled, irresponsible adolescence. By shutting down the bank of mom, stepping back, and demanding basic, non-negotiable human respect, she had forced him to step into the real world and take complete, full responsibility for his own family. She understood now that loving your children deeply does not mean allowing them to treat you like an endless, passive financial utility or a doormat. Boundaries were not cold, defensive walls built to lock people out in bitterness. They were protective, healthy fences erected to keep self-respect inside and foster genuine, healthy relationships built entirely on mutual honor. Sitting beside her son on the park bench, watching him quietly and humbly observe his child, without asking for a single dollar or making a bitter excuse, Angela knew that her firm, loving stance had saved them both. She had freed herself from exploitation while granting David the essential, vital opportunity to discover his own strength and maturity as a father, proving that real, genuine love requires the courage to say a firm, clear, dignified no. As the midday autumn sun warmed her shoulders comfortably, and the little blue boat floated peacefully near the grassy shore, Angela felt completely peaceful and beautifully whole. Her story closed not with a dramatic, loud confrontation, but with a quiet, triumphant victory of the human spirit. A timeless, powerful, inspiring reminder to every parent who has ever felt unappreciated or taken for granted. True love is not a subscription service that requires automated monthly payments, and basic, genuine human respect can never be purchased with a checkbook or financial handouts. When you teach people that your worth lies solely and completely in what you can provide for them, you teach them to diminish and exploit your humanity. Sometimes closing the bank of mom forever is the only way to open their eyes to reality, break the toxic cycle of entitlement, and reclaim the sacred value, dignity, and peace of your own life. You do not owe anyone your financial destruction or your hard-earned emotional peace, no matter how closely related to you by blood. Standing up for your dignity does not mean that you love your family less. It means you finally value yourself enough to stop letting them manipulate and destroy your soul. Angela took a deep, clean, refreshing breath of the crisp, cool autumn air, gently holding her sweet grandson's small, warm hand tightly as they walked together along the sunny, leaf-strewn park path, knowing that the bank of mom was closed forever. But her heart, her peace, and her life were finally, fully, wonderfully, and beautifully open.